In yachting, precision is not a luxury. It is the difference between function and failure. Every weld, every joint, every engineered solution must perform, not just in theory, but at sea. Engineered Yacht Solutions delivers specialist welding, fabrication, and onboard engineering built for real-world conditions. This is craftsmanship shaped by experience, pressure, and exacting standards. Trusted by professionals who understand there is no margin for error. Engineered Yacht Solutions. Discover engineering without compromise. EYSwelding.com.
Bob Saxon,
Yes.
good morning.
Good morning.
to see you again, brother.
Finally, we got back together.
I know. We've been missing each other for the last almost 2 months.
How was Monaco?
Wow. It was a completely different
See, I'm going to interview you.
Yeah, that's okay. That works. No, I mean, all the years I've been going to Monaco, I've been going as a manufacturer or a yacht management company. Never gone as media before.
Yeah.
And it's funny how the script flips a little bit. Mm-hmm. So looking at things completely differently, walking through doors that normally I wouldn't have walked through. But I'd tell you that I think I've got over 22 or 23 Monaco shows under my belt. And this one was a little bit quieter. I don't know if it's because it's 750 euros a ticket to get in or what's happened, but the quality, the conversations, the horns that are going off during the course of the show indicating this is someone signed a deal, theoretically. Right. That was real. And people were smiling. And 4 days isn't enough time, really. Yeah. I guess. Well,
I'm glad to hear there were some deals that happened. I would think that the uncertainty around the world and everything that's going on right now with all these different crazy things going on, that people get a little bit nervous when they're not sure and they're uncertain and all that and sort of drops off. But that being said, the affluent, the wealthy, always will pursue their recreation.
They will. And it's interesting you mentioned that. I was going to touch this later in that conversation, but it's perfect time to just bring this up. A gentleman by the name of Jack Ingalls, he's a yacht manager, project manager, specializes in refit. His business is really a professional organization pushing that. And he wrote an article just coming out of the Monaco show. He and I are going to sit on this show eventually and talk, probably in Amsterdam in a couple months. But this is some interesting numbers he brought forward. And again, I'm quoting him. The September yacht shows, the facts and figures are starting to come in. But unless we solve the oversight gap, the industry is building risk as fast as it's building yachts. Mm-hmm. From the Monaco Yacht Show market report and recent posts, the industry pressure is clear. There are 600 plus new super yachts under construction worldwide. Mm-hmm. That's 600. And add 2,000 plus annual refit yard visits and nearly 200 yacht sales in the past 6 months rather, the question becomes avoidable. Who's overseeing all this for each client? Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about yacht management, and we're going to talk about where this industry is going. But I thought that was pretty profound when you really start thinking about those numbers. What does 600 mega yachts look like in construction? We've got 200 new yachts recently sold that I'm aware, and you're probably aware of more in the pipeline. All these boats, this whole fleet needs their special surveys. Every one of these boats goes into the shipyard for refit periods. How are we going to support and sustain this? That's a good question.
Well, yacht management is in a growth surge right now, mainly because of the amount of inventory that's hitting. And as a yacht manager, and I, as having been a yacht manager for many, many years, started out as a yacht manager, know that the equation is pretty simple. You have an account manager that can handle about 5 yachts.
That's it.
Before you have to move on. Yacht management may seemingly be a big windfall of money, but it's not, because it's labor intensive. And it sure has changed over the years, I can tell you that.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, you, for all intents and purposes, kind of invented that business model, going back to what, the 80s?
Early 80s.
Early 80s, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you and I met just shortly thereafter. Yeah. I think I met you like 88, 89, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And, well, I didn't invent it so much. I was the son of the inventor, you could say. And I've heard, people refer to me as the patriarch of yacht management and all that. I think that's because most of my career has been involved in that, and as well as managing sales teams and running companies and all that. But yacht management was the core value that I always treasured and cherished because of the things that you do for owners of yachts to protect their interests and all. But it hasn't always been this way. And then back when I started, if you want to hear a little bit of the history, there was a fellow by the name of Bill Whittemore. Bill Whittemore. And some of the folks that are looking in on this broadcast may remember that name. I think most wouldn't remember his name. But Bill was a former Madison Avenue advertising executive, and he was a racing sailor, okay? And he was a member of the New York Yacht Club. And he got this idea together to start what he called yacht management. And he hooked up with a fellow by the name of David Halsey Marine in London. And at that time, and then they partnered up, and so that they could put it on their letterhead. Halsey could put it on Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Darien, Connecticut, Newport, Rhode Island, New York City, and then Bill Whittemore, on the other hand, could put London on his letterhead.
Covering all the bases.
Now, working for Bill Whittemore at that time were a couple of characters. One was Michael White. I don't know whether you know Michael White or not. Another pioneer in the industry. Michael White and I came from outside the industry. Coincidentally, the very same week we started in yacht management. He for David Halsey Marine, London.
Right.
And I for Whittemore and Williams out of Fort Lauderdale, Darien, and Newport, Rhode Island, and New York City.
You came from education, right?
Education, and I had a short stint as Parks and Recreation superintendent for the city of Fort Lauderdale, which people don't know about. Had 1,800 people working for me, and beaches, waterways, facilities, and all that. But giving a speech at a Rotary Club luncheon one day about Parks and Recreation. Along came Bill Whittemore and said, "I'd like to talk to you about coming to work for me." And I said, well, what do you do? And he says, well, I'm in the yacht management business. I said, no, I don't know anything about yachts. My dad owned a fishing boat in the Atlantic Highlands in New Jersey. That was it.
Okay, right? Yeah.
He said, exactly what I'm looking for, someone who doesn't know anything. And so I went to work for him. I took a chance. I went to work for him and worked for him for 5 years. We operated out of Darien and Newport. We had an office conveniently positioned between New York City, New York Yacht Club,
New
York City. Darien was halfway to Newport. So we spent 2 days in New York City, 2 days in Newport, and 1 day in Darien. And our first clients whose yachts Bill was managing were all professional racing. Now, they're businessmen, but they own racing sloops. And they participated in these big around-the-world races between Tokyo and Sydney, and these high-action racing sloops like Nirvana and Kanaloa, Ondine, that belonged to all these fellows that were members of the New York Yacht Club. Now, they had their gentleman yacht on the side. They had their old Trumpies, Mathises, and Stevenses, and Browards.
Look at those names.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And yet their main avocation was racing these big sloops around the world.
Wow.
And so we ran those sloops as charter businesses, okay? And that is how the whole charter management thing came to be, all right, to where we were managing those yachts. And it was funny because I would, the first day I showed up for work, not knowing what I was doing, of course, I walked in and Bill was standing there in a little office over here over the coin laundry, just behind Waxy's, that down there, little tiny office. And I showed up for the first day of work, and I walked in, and he was standing there with his New York Yacht Club tie and his blue blazer and his briefcase. And he said, I'll see you in a few weeks. And I said, well, where are you going? He said, well, I'm going to Darien. I'm going to our office, and I'm going to go to Newport. I'll get you up there this summer. And I went, but what am I supposed to do? He said, you see that phone over there? If it rings, pick it up and answer it. So that was my entire on-the-job training, was answering the phone. And then handling all the captain's cash before computers.
Right, of course.
For these big sailboats. And
before the internet.
We'd get a box of, big Kleenex tissue box that would come in. It was full of receipts. And like one receipt would say, damages to a bar in Tokyo because there was this fight between these two racing crews. Then there was bail bonds to get them out of jail for the fights that these guys were hardcore
sailors,
racing sailors.
Right,
they were grinders and all that. But anyway, that's how I got my start, and that's how. And then ultimately started my own company, Bob Saxon Associates.
Yeah. So when you started your company and you started now selling your services, thinking back, what would you say would be the more challenging or funny experiences you had trying to convince a high net worth individual to say, yeah, Bob, I'm going to do business with you. You got my boat.
Well, you have to create a need on their part. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing, the biggest lesson that I learned that I was good at was I could talk to rich people and I could tell them no when they didn't want to hear no.
That's
and I could tell them yes when they didn't want to hear yes.
Right.
And so they respected that.
Good.
See? Mm-hmm. So in those days, it was more about making sure that everything was tended to when they got on board their other yachts, their gentlemen's yachts, as I call them. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't have to worry about the next bilge pump they're going to buy and all that. As you know, as yacht management, that's how it all works. So that they could focus on the pleasure side. And that's what it is today, too. So the owners can focus on the pleasure use of the yacht as opposed to the numerous headaches that might occur with ownership.
No question. Yeah. You said something a minute ago about, showing them that they need it. They need it. Yep. I'd say every yacht owner that wants a good yachting experience needs good management. Yeah. They just don't understand or necessarily know how they need it. Yeah. They don't realize there's a tool available that takes those stresses away for the most part if they've got the right management group.
Well, the management group can play that complementary role, but it's all important that you have a captain who's a good onboard manager. Because who am I to say I'm 5,000 miles away and there's something going on the boat that I know better than the captain what needs to be done? No, he's your onboard manager, and he works in unison and link with the yacht management account manager. Right. And most yacht captains welcome the introduction of a yacht management company because they can take that edge off in dealing with the owner and deal with the yacht manager. So, nowadays when somebody asks me what I do, and I simplify it to this, I talk to the captain, I translate that to owner talk, I talk to the owner, I translate that to captain talk. So that when that owner comes on board, he and his family, or she and the family and all that come on board. That's it. They're just going to focus on the fun side. Yeah,
because I found that a lot of the individuals I was working with would start out by saying, well, my captain manages my boat for me.
Yeah. Well,
and by and large, that's true.
Yes.
But that means that captain is also not attending to so many other things that individual probably should because he's so burdened by all the administrative work that has to happen to make the boat run properly and be managed appropriately.
Yeah, plus I'm not casting a broad blanket approach or broad sweeping brush approach to this and saying that there are some less than reputable captains out there.
No, really?
So well, there are less than reputable owners too. So, but that is to say that there's a checks and balance that's provided by a yacht management company as well. Plus, nowadays, the technical support that's needed in order to stay consistent with the regulatory, safety, all the other things that have been built in that have made yacht management, well, back in the old days, yacht management was more of as I say, a one-on. I was the only yacht manager for Whittemore, yet we were managing 30-some yachts, okay? And when I started Bob Saxon Associates, before all the MLS and all the other things came into play, the number of people that were required to manage a fleet properly were much less than you see today. As I said, now the account balance is 5 to 1, 5 yachts to 1. But one of the keys over the years was for me to find a yacht manager to work for me that was superb communicator and also had the respect of the captains. And if you look down the list of yacht managers that have worked for me over the years, it's like, I wrote a few of them down. Chris Koretz. Okay. George Clark, Jim Edwards, Paul Engel. These are all yacht managers that work for me either at Bob Saxon Associates or International Yacht Collection and Onboard and a few of the other companies that I run.
Right.
Graham Lord.
Well-known names. Yeah,
Graham Lord. Andre Peen, great big yacht captain, 300-footers. He worked for Mike Reardon. Was one of my yacht managers. John Shulo.
Wow.
John Shulo. And then Sean Cassidy. And this is a partial list, but all first-class guys that could really communicate and also be firm when they needed to be and all that. They weren't pushovers. So that's one of the keys, too, is to have that guy that is the intermediary between the yacht and the owner to be someone who is really superb.
Right. Well, it helps if you know what you know. and that there's a crossover where you go from you know what you don't know, and you get to the point of expertise where now you know what you know, so you can have some confidence, and you can basically stand your ground when you need to, or create space when you have to.
Yeah. But yacht management today is a much more highly sophisticated service product than it used to be in the old days.
Oh, no question. I'm just walking around Monaco and talking to the yacht management companies that were there, and there's a lot of them, and you see various grades of excellence. I would say there's some companies over there that have really dialed it in, and then you've got a whole bunch of organizations or companies that are just working their way into it.
Yeah.
And so you got all levels of what's available to
Well, there are companies that say yacht management is washing a boat down once a week. And turn the engines over once in a while and all that.
Google yacht management and see what comes up. And you're like, whoa, hold on a second.
Yeah. Well, it's like as I explained to owners, it's like property management, except that this property moves and it makes it a little bit difficult to keep your hands on it.
It's true. Well, here's another. We talked about this before we did this interview a couple of weeks ago, and I told you I wanted to go down this rabbit hole because it's one that I've been pulled into in previous conversations, and the more I dive into the subject of crew mental health and how that's a priority in yachting, the more I realize that it gets a lot of lip service. All you have to do is sit back and listen, or you're going to hear a lot of people talk about crew mental health. But then the real question begs is, okay, it's one thing to talk about it, but where's the actualization going on, right? So I told you I had an interview with a woman by the name of Elle Fisher, and went to Mexico and met with her. We did really in-depth interview talking about her experiences in crew. And Bob, I brought you a gift for being back on my show.
Screw the crew.
Screw the crew. Okay.
They left the E out.
That's intentional. It's signed by the author. This is a fun read. This is really a fun read because reading this book, and she wrote it under pseudonym, but
interesting.
Elle wrote Screw the Crew, and she takes you through large yacht crew. So it's like 28 positions, and she describes really eloquently the personality traits and the roles of all these crew positions. So that's what that book does. If you've never been on a yacht and you don't understand the complexity and depth of the crew involvement, that takes you there. And if you have been on a yacht, you'll read that going, oh, I know that person. I know that I've seen that person a lot. But I bring this up because I've had so many people reach out to me in the last year wanting a really honest conversation, willing to talk about some of the challenges that we're dealing with. And I'm not talking about the below deck stuff. I'm talking about the mentally, emotionally, spiritually evolved part of the human side of our industry. I tell people that will listen, I say, I think there's three, what I call the sacred trinity of yachting. You've got the high net worth individual, the yacht owner, that everything should focus on his or her.
The client experience.
Absolutely. You got the crew. I think, you take either one of those out of the game and you don't have you don't have it. And then you got the asset. You have to maintain that asset and create the platform that is safe, that is enduring, that's will give you the experience you're expecting. Yeah. Everything else is the fluffy stuff that holds it together. And so I guess starting out, going back when you started, was crew mental health essentially just make it through the next charter and get to the bar and keep going, or what's happened in the evolution of our profession?
I don't. First of all, it's in crisis mode right now.
It is.
Okay, crew health, crew mental health, and crew and all welfare. But I think it's been kept under the covers, out of sight. I think that there was just as many issues and negative issues in terms of crew welfare as there is now as there were in the old days, but it just wasn't exposed. And now you see it a lot. And I know that the part of the Marine Labor Convention was to address these kinds of things on behalf of crew as well as it covered a few other things. But but the suicide rate, sexual harassment, And all these things have now become more apparent. And social media has brought it all out into the open and all that stuff. Plus, the fact is that, and of course, I've never been a crew other than, fishing with my dad.
Yeah.
But when I was 6 years old, so I can't talk to the rigors of working as a crew. I mean, from personal experience.
Right.
But certainly having managed crews for 40 years through like 2,000 yachts, the incidents.
You've managed the crises.
Yes. And these range anywhere from, as I said, sexual harassment allegations, all the way up to the mental health and the suicide and all this. Yeah. And it's on the rise, or at least we believe it is.
It is.
And it stems from a number of things. Number one, if I'm in an office and I'm working around a group of people all day long, the whistle blows at 5 o'clock, everybody shuts their computers off, we lock the front door, we go home. Yacht, you don't get to do that.
No.
You lock the door, but you're right there with the same people you work with. Now you're living with them, and those dynamics kick in about
it's a small space.
Very confined space, because generally speaking, crew quarter designs are an afterthought. Yep. We want to give all the creature comfort space to the owner, rightfully so. But the commercial side of the business, I'm talking about the freighters and carriers, international carriers and all that, have really addressed this to a great extent.
They have.
And I'm on an advisory board of a company called Weekend.
We're going to talk about it, but I'm glad you brought it up. So,
and they have, they're full in on crew mental health and all these other things, shoreside consulting and help for crew that are facing these stresses and all that. But the whole idea of what kind of an environment, what kind of a space do you provide for crew in order to ease these kinds of dynamics that occur is very, very important. And I believe that it's the role of anybody who creates the living space on a yacht should be involved, okay, all at once, starting with the flag states, with the yacht management companies, the owners, the crew, the captain, the insurance companies who cover these sorts of things, and also to address all there should be a unified effort to address these matters right now, especially from the flag states. Now, I believe I read something. I thought about this, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could involve the flag states in addressing these issues these dynamics that are occurring with close confinement and all these other things. And I understand Marshall Islands, if I'm not mistaken, has already begun to address it.
They have.
So that's where it should all begin, right?
Yeah,
there.
Absolutely. I talked to Iona about that recently, and they definitely have. They're kind of cutting edge. I think I even mentioned that in one of my earlier podcasts that they've done that.
But it is a serious problem, and it's been behind the curtains,
right?
And now it's coming out. I think mainly because of social media.
So MLC, it dictates that you give X square meters of space per crew.
Yeah, they lifted that from the commercial industry.
Right, and that I would say that's like absolute minimum. Yeah. When you understand what that footprint really looks like. Mm-hmm. And that's why I go out on a limb a little bit, and I say that I think the solution begins with the naval architect and the yacht designer. You look at some of the design work and some of the new technologies coming out. We're coming up with propulsion technologies that are actually allowing us to reduce the footprint of the engine spaces, the engineering spaces. And as that enhances and goes down and becomes more mainstream, the question begs, what do you do with additional real estate you're able to allocate when your vessel technology is changing? And I'm gonna basically stir the pot a little bit because it's fun to do. Yeah. But stop giving it back to the owner and start giving it to the crew a little bit. We have done such a remarkable job with outdoor balconies and folding bulwarks and beach clubs and tender garages that convert to salon spaces and cinemas and all of the things that make yachting and owning and enjoying your yacht just spectacular. But we still need to really imagine or understand that if the crew is in stress mode, if they are not running at 100% or even at 80%, your experience is going to be diminished. It's inevitable. And when you look at some of these charter programs that go back to back to back, those crew are running on caffeine and adrenaline and just diminished energy. So I think that's number one, is looking at spaces. And I will give credit where credit's due. I've said this previously. I was on board Breakthrough, which is the 119-meter Fed ship that Van Lent recently built and delivered and just sold, as a matter of fact. And Bob, that boat, that defines the ultimate crew accommodation. 2 decks of crew space. In each crew cabin, not only do you have far exceeded LLC requirements, you could do Pilates in each cabin. You have true living space so that you can step away. Because I say it a lot, there is no second shift on these boats. And while you have hours of rest requirements, we all know that's a recommend. It's supposed to be a requirement.
It's all well and good.
It's all good, but it doesn't.
Practicality of it's not quite there.
Because here's unlike any other job you'll ever have. That boat's a 24/7 boat. If something happens to that boat at 3 o'clock in the morning, all hands on deck. Has to be. If you're in the middle of the ocean, all of a sudden you have to fight a fire. You don't have a choice. You can't say, well, the people on shift are going to deal with it. The rest of us will just stay in our cabins. No. So when you understand that as crew, you are mentally turned on as long as you're on the boat, that's why when you do have the opportunity to bring it down a notch, I think it's important to create that.
It's funny because the hottest topic right now amongst crew, believe it or not, is crew gratuities.
I hear that too.
It is taken on a life of its own. I put an ad hoc committee together by way of EBA to address the issues of crew gratuities because it's nightmarish in proportions. Such things as, a captain going after a charter client because they only left a 15% gratuity instead of a 20%. And all that, and these misplaced expectations.
What about the captain that holds on to other gratuities and then...
fair distribution. Well, it's not all...
That's his right, essentially, as I understand it. It's the captain's discretion. But, I will tell you that when I was placing crew, you had 2 different mindsets of crew coming in looking for work. You had the guy that wanted, or the girl that wanted to work for a private owner, a private vessel, non-charter, non-commercial, and wanted to just enjoy high-end service for high net worth individual. Then you got the people coming in wanting to get on these commercial vessels, wanting to do the charters, working for gratuity, knowing that they show up and turn up and everything goes well. They got a big upside. And I think that's the sector that we're talking about here, is those that have put themselves into that space. They did it intentionally, knowing they're going to be working 18-plus hour days sometimes, but they have an upside coming to them. Yeah,
the upside is, of course, the gratuity side, but the problem lies in crew that look at it as compensation as opposed to a gift, you see. And then you have the other side. The other problem is that when an owner will hire a crew and say, well, we're not going to pay you fair wages. We're not going to put you within your normal range because just think of all the gratuities you're going to make from chartering the boat. Well, any crew that ever goes into a situation like that, figuring that, okay, I'm not getting paid what I should, but I'm going to make it all back in gratuities. Then when the gratuities are not what they're expecting, that's where the issues come in. They say, well, we worked this hard. You only gave us 15 or 10%, and we normally get 15%. Because and that's our compensation, you see. Instead of saying thank you so much, boom. Well, if the tip is low, the tip is low, right. And then the other problem lies on the agent side, where the charter agents don't want to discuss. There are a few, not many. The charter agents don't want to discuss this kind of thing with the charter client. No, so it's a surprise to the charter client.
And therein lies the unfairness in all of this, because with full transparency. First of all, most charter clients are repeat, many of them, so they understand. They know what to expect, that, after they've paid for the charter, they still have to pay for the fuel. They still have to pay for provisioning.
35 to 40% more than the charter hires your general.
Right. And the gratuity is expected.
Allowance.
But going to the other one where you're hired by an owner who's saying, I'm going to pay you under market, but you're going to get the upside. Take a look at the contract. Mm-hmm. Do you even work under contract? And that's the first thing I tell people that I mentor about joining yachts and being crew is absolutely work under an SEA, Seamen's Employment Agreement.
It's the only one I use.
If you don't, you're at risk and you have almost no recourse. Mm-hmm. And if you're working for a boat or an owner that doesn't want to sign you under a contract, walk away.
Right.
Walk away.
Yeah.
There's going to be someone else who's going to be naive enough or silly enough to work for that individual without a contract.
Right.
But really, in this day and age, you should protect yourself with a good contract and understand. Right. And then I think some of those arguments go away. If you've decided to take a job under market, buyer beware, essentially.
Right. Well, I always encourage the captain's crew, the crew, when you're negotiating your contract with the owner and all, settle for a fair wage, okay, within the range. Now, that range can be on the high side, depending on your training and experience and all that, and your charter experience and all that. But you negotiate that in. But you're going into a job where part of your job is to manage charters for the owner of the boat.
There you go.
So that on the other side of it, if the gratuity, don't look at the gratuity as compensation. And don't factor that into your negotiations, because if the yacht doesn't get chartered for one reason or another, not at the fault of the crew,
no,
then there's bad feelings because, wait a second, you said we're going to make all these tips, and we're not, because the boat's not chartering for one reason or another. Maybe it was a world collapse, who knows. Chartering is unbelievably a robust business right now, too.
I hear that, yes.
And you know, my famous statistic that I always like to say is 78%. This is true. We developed this when I was at Camper Nicholson's, the Yachting Index, which was a paper put together for the industry. And one of the statistics that we discovered for the industry was that 78% of those who buy or build a yacht have chartered at least once. 78%, so better than 3/4 of the people who buy or build a yacht have chartered once. Why? Well, they got the experience. They like it. Maybe they charter a few times, and he says or she says, hey, look, why don't we get our own yacht and do this, okay, and charter it out. And that becomes a buying decision, you know. I
love that. Well, there's another piece that came into the conversation in the last couple of years. When the Ritz-Carlton collection came out, and there are some other businesses following suit, and they've come up with these smaller cruise ships, providing you a really bespoke experience, expensive, but you know, different than what you get on most of these ships we see in Port Everglades and other places. And the question was asked, well, is that going to pick the pocket of the yachting industry's charter?
They're trying.
But you know what? This is interesting feedback. I'm hearing a resounding no, because what I'm hearing is you're bringing in a lot of high net worth individuals that never thought about yacht charter before. They get this cruise experience. They're enjoying the cruise experience, and then they get the conversation with a good charter broker, charter manager that says, well, if you like that, if you bring two other couples along for what you paid to be on this bespoke, I use that word, sorry, this nice cruise ship, you can charter your own yacht and have an experience that's scaled significantly above what you just enjoyed, and that brings them into the charter yachting industry. And you bring in new fresh clients.
It's a proven calculation that on a per day, per person basis, that you might be paying for first class on the Royal Caribbean or wherever it might be, it compares very favorably with having your own little mini cruise ship.
That's right.
On a per person per day basis.
So,
and it's a much more personalized experience, and it's customized, your own diet, your own menu, everything you want to do. You want to run every day and visit a different island? Okay, we'll do that. You want to turn around and go back? Yeah, we'll do that. You know, so you can't do that with a cruise ship.
No, you can't.
But I do know that I've been watching their marketing. And they are coming after the yachting business. Absolutely.
I'm hoping to speak to someone in the C-suite of that organization and get this on Yachting USA, because I think it's relevant, and it'll be fun to kind of get their perspective as it dovetails to what we are doing as well.
Yachting, the charter industry is booming right now. And it's funny because some of the island groups have turned their backs on yachting and chartering. In particular, the Bahamas, as a matter of fact, have decided that, and I can't remember which minister or what it was in the Bahamas said, foolishly had a press conference and said, we're tired of these wealthy sorts coming in here and taking advantage of us and taking advantage of our pristine waters and our beautiful beaches and all that. Now we're going to get them now.
Oh, geez.
That is a capsulized version of what was said, but that's when they passed the value-added tax over there, another 10% on top of it.
Yeah.
And then you had an annual cruising license plus sales tax and all these other things that come. Even and there are some beaches, if you want to have a beach party, you have to pay to rent that area of the beach now and then. So, but what they're doing, and this foolish marketing, okay? And so the industry, and I'm not afraid to say this, the industry has sort of turned their back on the Bahamas, and they're looking for other destinations.
Go down island a ways.
Or to where I've been working.
You've been
other destinations, potential
down in
destinations.
Costa Rica, right?
Costa Rica, Belize, and now Panama.
Yeah.
And in each of those cases, my job was to develop a plan that would attract yachts to come to address their resources, their shortfalls, their marketing efforts and all. And as a matter of fact, Panama has just passed a presidential decree number 4 by the new president of Panama, which says specifically, we are going to become a boating country. We want to become a boating country. So everybody that's involved in anything from the service perspective, now focus your sights on bringing boats in here. So then after they heard what I did in Costa Rica and in Belize, they invited me in to come visit with them for several days and look at what they have and then give them a plan of action. And I just turned it over to their tourist division and it was approved. And so that's going to move forward on that basis.
Congratulations. That's real.
But you see, we're going to call that sort of like a golden triangle down there because people, you're not going to be able to peel off the Mediterranean fleet and convince them to come to Central America and all that. No, the Mediterranean stays, it's resilient.
Yeah.
60% of the world chartering goes on in the Med.
It is true.
And it'll never change. It's always there. It doesn't matter what happens. The Med is a strong charter market.
Yeah.
But people are looking to other destinations now, and that's what this is all about. And so instead of those countries fighting one another down there and trying to get their market share to come in, we're going to put them together. I'm going to put them together in this coalition marketing effort so that they can be a destination that's comprised of 3 countries as opposed to individual countries trying to have them beat the pep down.
I love that. I think that is a good counterbalance to when you see, a governmental agency such as the Bahamas basically pushing back. It's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. There's we're a mobile industry. You don't have to just come across the Straits of Florida and be there. Short-sighted on them, unfortunately, because their whole economy is based
now
on
they
tourism.
realize it, you see.
Yeah, well, poke the bear, right?
That's right. That's right.
Before I move on, something else has come into this yacht management and cruise space conversation, and that is the lack of or the need of enhancing the vetting process, the background checks. And I say that for a lot of reasons. And of course, over the summer, we all saw what happened in the Bahamas with Paige Bell. And her murder was tragic and potentially avoidable. It's ironic, too. I hate it when I'm right, because it was like for 6 weeks that she was the center of all conversations. And, it was, I think that was used by a certain extent by a certain, demographic of our industry trying to self-promote what they want to do. I was in Monaco last week and her name wasn't mentioned once. It's like, that's old news. It's moved on. Let's forget about that. But let's not forget about that. And so I have talked to a couple businesses that are on the security side of our industry. And I just interviewed a yacht captain that said, stop calling it an industry, call it a profession. He doesn't think it's an industry.
Okay. I have a definition for an industry and a profession. I mean, an industry is a loosely fragmented collection of similar business profiles, kind of like moving together like this, right? Yeah. But a profession pulls together, okay, in a concerted effort. I always I give an example to the, if I was a doctor and I invented a new procedure for heart disease, okay, Oh, I am not going to keep that to myself, you know. I'm going to share it with my fellow professionals, and they're going to adopt it. It's going to be put into the medical journals. I'll be lauded at the national convention. I'll get an award and all that.
Right.
But the yachting industry is kind of like, the yachting industry doesn't get together that much because the amount of money that's available. You see, the greed, not greed, I can't say that.
There's some.
But there's so much, the amount of money that is available, people don't really want to say, let's say that somebody comes up with a new material to build a boat that's lighter, faster, more endurable, and all that. They're not going to send their set of plans over to the builder next door to them and all and say, hey, take a look at this. I might help you out a little bit.
It's their trade secret that's going to be their...
Because of the amount of money that's available.
Right.
So
It's arguable in industry versus a profession for sure. But so when I was involved in sourcing crew, we did not, as a matter of course, do a background check on the crew we're placing.
Yeah.
We had all sorts of CVs, and you know the thing would be, oh my goodness, we just lost our second stew, or we just lost our chief engineer. We need to have somebody.
I call that the resume race.
The resume race, thank you. And you know, unfortunately, the CVs come out, and first thing you do is you look at the photo in the top right hand corner, going, yeah, that's no, but it's real. Yeah. But very little consideration to crew culture. I think you mentioned Graham Lord earlier in the conversation, and Graham's new business is doing, I think, a phenomenal job of taking the time to create crew culture and create a business model that allows them to move crew around as necessary. So they place a crew on a particular boat, and there's friction, it's not working out. It's not a matter of just, you're gone, you know. Okay, well, you're our employee. We're taking you off of this boat. We're going to put so-and-so on this boat. We think it's better fit. Yeah. You're going to go to this boat. Yeah. And because, I mean, I think that's a reality check is, you know, you go in any social circle, just go to these industry events coming up in the next month. Right. You're going to see cliques and groups of people associating with each other. Yeah. And you almost know who's going to be in which group, right? There's some crossover. Some groups integrate well with others. Some kind of stay off to the side, whatever, but that's human nature. And I think that's the human part that comes into casting crew together. Right. So, you know, what's missing here, I think, this is just my opinion based on many conversations, is a real crew profiling process where it's kind of like you do a personality profile to understand, you know, what type of individual you are working with, because they work well with other types of individuals of this grade, but not so much of this grade. You do the background check. My management company I was running a couple years ago, we'd charge $250 to do a background check, surface level, and if you wanted a deep background check, it'd be like $1,500 or $1,800.
Yeah, it's like a credit check kind of.
In a way, yeah. And 10% of our clients would elect to do it. Yeah. 10% maybe, 90% would just give us crew. They didn't care.
If I was an owner of a company, international company, I was hiring a chief executive officer, I wouldn't just go by that piece of paper and say this guy looks pretty good or she looks pretty good. There will be a deep dive into the background and all that stuff. When I went to work for MarineMax, and it was a vice president position, I had to take what they call the caliper. Have you ever heard of the caliper?
No.
So the caliper is this 5-hour exam that you take, and it goes in, and it's also foolproof, so you can't answer by saying, gee, I think this is what they want to hear kind of questions. Okay. Is that foolproof? So then that 5-hour test determined whether or not the specific position that I was being hired into MarineMax, number one, would I fit in? And number two, would I be happy with that position?
So important.
There was a famous hotelier named Horst Schulze. And he was, I can't remember the hotel chain, one of the big ones. And they had same kind of test. If you were a dishwasher or you were applying for a dishwasher's job, you had to go through a battery of tests to determine whether or not you would really be a cool dishwasher, or whether you would love washing dishes before they would hire you and all that. And I took a lesson from him. I knew him. He's an incredible executive and all. But here's an owner by just saying, yeah, go ahead. We need a chef. Go ahead. Hire somebody. So then you go to the crew placement agencies, and there comes this resume race, because whoever gets the first resume in on the top of that pile, it has an advantage. And every crew placement agency is probably sending the same resume on the same chef.
Oh yeah,
and all that. So then it becomes, and many. I'm not saying all. And my son happens to be in the crew placement business, as a matter of fact, but he does check references. But many crew placement agencies, in order to expedite the process, just send resumes, and they'll tell you, we don't check references. And and besides that, the references that you get on any crew, they're there. They're on the resume for a reason, because they're going to say nice things about those people. Right. When you're checking on crew, you need to read between the lines.
The gaps.
Yeah, you need to read between. And then I have. Crew are going to hate me. I love crew. And I don't mean the broad brush crew either, nor charter boat or any of them. They're just culprits. There are extremes, just like in any other business.
Guaranteed.
You have some bad apples. But the whole process of checking resumes, checking references and all that, you really have to be scientific about it. But I also have 12 interview questions. My top 12 tough interview questions that I like to ask. I insist that the owner be there, and I be there, and the captain candidate, or whatever candidate it might be, whatever position. And these are not yes/no answers. These are tough questions, because you want them to start talking. And you will not believe how many times one of my questions is, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And sure enough, most of the time they'll say, no felonious background. Well, there was this one time, but
it doesn't count really.
It was this thing between the owner, and it just didn't work out. And then you start hearing that, and then of course the alarm starts going off in your mind and all that. But again, we had a situation the other day where a fellow applied for a job on a 90-foot boat. And the owner didn't get the candidate from me, nor did he get it from my son. He got it on his own from a buddy of his that said, this guy. So I said, well, what's his name? And the owner told me his name. I said, wait. The alarm's going off. I don't know where I know that name from, but there's something's
there. Right?
So I then remembered that he had been placed on a boat over in Sarasota, this candidate. And I wrote to that owner in an email, and I said, didn't you hire this guy on your boat? And he says, yeah, until he walked off the job, and we were missing a few things on the boat. He walked off unexpectedly. So we did a post-criminal check. It turned up he had 13 Social Security numbers.
Gosh. Wow.
So the due diligence is not there. It should be there, but it's not there. Right. And that's what you end up with, bad seeds that get into these crews.
That's right.
Now, I don't know where this wackadoo that
did Page,
they killed Page, but where he came from, or what he was placed.
They're both South African, and there was some energy there that was not good.
Yeah.
And, you can't catch it all, and you're not going to prevent it all. You're going to have occasional tragedies happen. It's in any industry. It's in society. It just is. But I think if you're going to find anything positive to come from what happened in Harbor Island with Page, it is the recognition that as a profession, as an industry, we can do better. We can think more strategically about how we hire crew, how we vet crew, how we monitor crew, how we pay attention to what's happening. One of the biggest problems, I believe, is affecting the issues with crew on board boats these days. These things like that Tristan has right now, these mobile devices, these cell phones, you're so connected. And, when I was a young man working offshore, in my offshore experience in 4 years working in the Gulf of Mexico in my commercial diving gig, we would be gone, because I was in the diving department, we would be gone for anywhere from minimum 2 weeks, oftentimes 6 or 8 weeks. We'd go out for the duration of that job we're on. And sometimes we move from that job to the next job. And I knew when I left the flagpole at at our headquarters to get on the crew boat to go out to the barge that we were going to work on for the next X number of weeks. That's it. I said goodbye to my friends, family, made a couple phone calls to my parents, my sister, whoever, my girlfriend, going offshore. I'll call you when I'm back. And for that block of time, the only thing that I was focused on, the only thing I knew was what we were doing. Mm-hmm. Well, I did hear about John Lennon being killed in New York when I was offshore, and that ripped out there real quick. So we did pick up on the occasional news. It's always bad news. We'd hear about it. But the bottom line is the distractions were nominal, if any. So we were capable of disconnecting and just focusing on the work at hand. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a lot of captains, and I talked to a lot of yacht managers, and I talked to a lot of people that are, working on these boats. And you had the added drama of friends and family that intrude on a daily, almost hourly basis into what they're doing. You've seen it probably. You walk the docks at LMC or some of these other yards where the boats are in for work, and you'll see crews standing in a shadow someplace with their cell phone in their hand, and I'm sure that's not what their captains asked them to do at that moment. So we add in our own societal toxins, I guess, into their day-to-day work. And so on top of being, culturally challenged, they're typically young, sometimes first experiences away from home in confined spaces. They're also then carrying the burden of everything else that's happening outside of their world. Mm-hmm. And I think that is problematic. I wish I could say I have a solution for it. You can keep the phones off deck for a while.
You can, and you can prohibit social media. And also, as you know, employment agreements often say in there that no matter what happens on this yacht, it stays on this yacht. It's not to be discussed with anybody outside. Who was aboard? When were they aboard? What were they doing? None of that stuff should be. Right. That's a culture. That's an environment, work environment that the captains control. And it can be minimized. It can't be eliminated completely. But certainly crew that are spending a lot of time on their cell phones and all that, if it's not business, it's not the official business of the boat and all that, right. Should be minimized.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, Bob, something else I've known about you for a long time.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Because you keep showing up. And I love the roles you show up in. And we were talking earlier, we're here at EBA. You've been the president of EBA 6 times?
6 years. Yes.
6 years.
Six consecutive.
Okay.
And I just stepped down. I'm the immediate past president now. And that puts me onto the executive committee. President, immediate past president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. There's 5 of us on the executive committee. And this board of 12 meets here, and the executive committee kind of advises the board on certain matters, such as HR issues with the association and all that. So, but it's... So
you get this gig, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when I first met you, and I did my first tenure as a board member of the ISS, International Superyacht Society. Actually, at that time, it was the Superyacht Society. It was a big deal when we added the I into it, made it the International Superyacht Society. We made this the International.
Society. It used to be the Florida Yacht Brokers Association.
I remember that. Yeah. But you were the president of ISS.
I was founding president of ISS.
That's right.
It was 30 some years ago at Fort Lauderdale Boat Show. Yeah. A group of industry leaders got together on a big commercial boat that was parked at the Flibs. And we just started talking about the need for a global association to a profession, to move it forward as a profession. Okay. Right. And Mike Kelsey Sr. was there, and
Ray was MTU Ray
Carell,
yeah.
Ray Carell, Richard Hine, Ed Sachs was there. And when and there were many people on this boat, and a lot of important people on this boat. And then when they said, well, let's go ahead and appoint a president, everybody stepped back, and I was the only one that was standing there.
You love standing at the line.
So I was founding president. I have been since the beginning of ISS. I've been president 4 times since then as well. But now they kind of like kick me off the board. You know, what they do is they want to make room for younger people, which is the right thing.
Absolutely.
And so they gave me emeritus.
Perfect.
So I can go to board meetings and I can say whatever I want, but I can't vote.
You can't vote.
So Michael Moore, Norma Treese, myself, and Mark Maserati, and a few others have emeritus, and that's a nice way of saying shut up and just listen.
Yeah. Good to have your name here.
But I love the
council.
International Superyacht Society, and our annual gala.
Yeah,
is a fantastic event.
Yeah. I'll be there again this year.
And I get to say a few words at the beginning. I did a few MC gigs with them for
that's
years.
where I was going with this. It's like, that's what I've really admired about your career. You show up at these events and you carry the microphone and you carry a voice, and you also do a lot of mentoring.
I do a lot of mentoring.
And the YPY, Young Professionals in Yachting, have asked me to do some mentoring, and I enjoy that when I have that opportunity. Yeah. What's that look like for you? How did you get into that? And
they asked me. I was the first speaker at the very, very first YP, Young Professionals Yachting, YPY. Right. I call them yippers. I was at their very first meeting they had, and I addressed their association. So I was their first speaker, not their first meeting. And then several years later, I did a goal-setting seminar for them, so I was their second speaker. And then more recently, as you know, at the Polo Yacht Club, we did that gig over there.
We were there, yeah.
So I was invited. It wasn't just, gee, Bob, would you like to mentor? They sent me an application. I had to fill out an application. And being an ex-school teacher, it was right up my, and a baseball coach, it's right up my alley.
Right.
So I first hooked up with Katie and Richard Hagen. Do you know Katie and Richard?
They're very much so, yeah. And I filled out that same application, by the way. They were fantastic to work with. And their company at the time was like comprised of 3 people, Katie, Richard, and then they had a partner. Yeah. And they said, we're in a situation now where we can't grow. We don't know what to do, And I said, well, get rid of your partner. Oh, what do you mean get rid of our partner? And I said, no, there's an old rule. My old rule in business is, if you're thinking about a partnership, think about it and then forget about it. So we structured a deal. I could go down that rabbit hole with you, but I won't.
They structured a deal. And I said, it's going to be painful. It's going to cost you some money. Okay. But so they did it, and they bit the bullet and did that, and then they worked their way through those issues. And now they showed me their new facility. Well, the next part of it, they started growing. Yeah. So then they asked me to come back in and help them manage the growth. Okay. What about the dynamics of what we're doing now? What should we do? And all that. Look, I always say that there's the path. Okay. You got to take the path. I'm going to give you a flashlight. Right. Okay, and that's going to help you get down the path and all. But you're be the ones that have to do it. They have this unbelievable facility now. And they have at least 35 people working for them.
Is this a beautiful growth?
Oh, it's unreal.
It is. It's great.
And I love them. Right. They're good, really good folks and all that. And of course, she just had a baby. And
she did.
So on and so forth. But now I've had several mentoring opportunities since then. Some of them are not quite as dramatic and is not nearly as interesting as what we do with these folks. But just like I still coach baseball a little bit, I still get asked.
Really?
The guys that I coached when I was coaching high school at Givens, coaching baseball, their grandkids are now baseball, little league age. And I get these calls, Coach, can you come out and take a look at my son's swing and all that kind of stuff. So that's mentoring,
That's important.
And I love it because it brings out the old teacher in me. Because in all the years, in all the businesses that I've run, all the companies I work for, somebody, Ann Landry said,
love her.
Ann Landry said, when I was inducted into the International Chartering Hall of Fame in Antigua, Ann Landry introduced me. And she said, there's one thing about Bob, if you've ever worked for Bob, and there were maybe 200 people there. And she said, how many people work for Bob? And about 30 people raised their hand. So she said, the one thing you have to realize about Bob is he's not your boss. He's your coach. He coaches you.
Isn't that there it is?
And he's a teacher and a coach. He's not a boss.
Yeah, that makes you a leader, by the way. Yeah.
And so anything I've ever done in my life in business and all that, running a board, working as a subordinate in big companies, Marine Max, HMY, and all that. I was vice presidents in there. It's always coaching and teaching, as opposed to wagging my finger and being the boss.
We're getting close to wrap up, but I want to leave you with this thought in this context. I'm about to hit my 40th year in yachting.
I've just hit it.
And in that 40 years, Bob, I point to you as both a inspiration and a mentor to me, because we've crossed paths how many dozen times in different projects and different opportunities and venues. And you've always been so generous with your time and your insights. And I think that is magical in some ways. I think there's a lot any of us can learn from giving back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go out on a limb, but I'm going to guess that when I start to put together the first chapter of OPY, you might be willing to jump on and be, part of the initial board.
Of course.
All right.
I'm always looking for board seats. But, it's funny. You say these very nice things about me, and I've had some nice recognitions over the year, Lifetime Achievement Awards from EBA, ISS, and all that. But if there's anything any advice I can offer anybody who's watching this right now is don't believe your headlines. Because once you start believing your headlines, you become less humble.
Yeah.
And you don't appreciate it. And the slide began. And once the slide begins, it becomes very rapid descent. Yeah. It's like a roller coaster. You reach the top. If you don't hang in there, and you start downwards, it's a very fast track down to oblivion.
Well, I've had a turbulent last few years, personally and professionally, which, it's funny when you stir the pot a little bit and you're forced into retrospect and integration, reinvention. I live right now in a place of gratitude. I tell people that, when I look back on my career, what a blessing I've really been given to spent 40 years in this profession. And
lucky we are.
We are very fortunate. We're very lucky. And I really believe that when you do live in gratitude and understand that, we have a lot to be very thankful for. If things change, the whole conversation kind of shifts a little bit, and I think that's a good thing. What would you, looking at the industry, the profession we're in, and the future, what do you wish that we would get better going forward? What's if you could step in and be the director of the entire profession and say, okay, we're going to fix this one thing, what would that be?
I believe that we talked about the definition of an industry and the definition of a profession. Profession moves along together in coalition, okay? And if there's anything that I'd like to see the industry, and this was part of the mission statement for the International Superyacht Society, and that is to work closer together as an industry and to push the industry as in a coalition, as opposed to working fragmentedly and individually and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. I think when you get to a place where you can step back a little bit and look at it from 20,000 feet, you start seeing what that benefit can look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I tell you what a long, strange trip this has been. I tell you, it's great, but it's wonderful to sit here in the office. Yeah, it's exactly the gratitude.
What was the song? It was a hippie. What was the song?
That's oh gosh, come on! I can sing the lyrics to you, but then everybody. Yes. One of Jerry Garcia's better.
Doodah Man, right?
Doodah Man, that's right.
Doodah Man.
Yeah. Yep. But no, here we are in EBA headquarters. Thanks again to EBA for allowing us to be here and host this beautiful facility.
Not to forget EBA, we have 2,000 members now, and it is the largest professional association in the industry.
That's real.
And we do some really cool things.
I've been a member for years. I've never been a yacht broker, but I find a lot of value in the membership, so I'm putting that out there too. Even if you're not in the brokerage community, there's real value to be part of this organization, and I'll continue my membership, certainly. And again, to my good friend Paul Flannery, he's not here today, but his direction of this organization has been stellar, I think.
He's a beauty.
Is he, though? He really is. And Bob, we'll be seeing a lot of each other in the weeks to come. We got Flibs coming up, and I'll be over back in Amsterdam again for the Mets.
Okay.
And
fantastic.
So things are going to keep rolling.
Be sure to tune in. Speaking of EBA, we have a charter webinar coming up at the end of this month.
Okay.
Just before the boat show. And you'll hear me pontificate.
Cool.
And read the white paper on crew gratuities.
I want to read that. Maybe I'll even bring that into a future
Anybody
episode.
that's looking in and wants a copy of the white paper on crew gratuities, send me an email, bob@bobsaxon.net, and I'll make sure you get a copy of it.
We'll put that in the show notes too.
Okay.
All right, Bob, thanks again. Really wonderful to spend some time with you this afternoon.
Well, you sure make it easy, Rick.
Well, I try my best anyway.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Until the next time, I'm out of here.
If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.